Excellent. Very good afternoon to everybody and welcome along to our Business Spotlight interview series. My name's Ron Maycock. I'm the owner of Action Coach Castleford and Business Performance UK. And I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by Andy Tennant. Very good afternoon to you, Andy.
Hello, Ron. Nice to be with you this afternoon.
It's great to have you with us. So Andy is the Director of Gentium UK, and we're going to be hearing lots more from Andy in just a few moments. Before we do that, though, I really wanted to explain what the purpose of these interviews actually is. So we're surrounded by some amazing businesses in our region. They're each on their own journeys, and these interviews, I guess, help us share their successes, share their stories, and actually increase awareness of what they're actually doing. And we do this all in the name of abundance so that we can get more people aware of businesses like Gentium UK. So if that sort of resonates with yourself, that's the purpose of these interviews and what we're showcasing today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Andy. Andy, if you want to tell me a little bit more about Gentium UK.
Obviously. So Gentium's a fairly newborn company, I suppose. We came around in around 2019, which at the time it was myself, so just Andy Tennant trading as. And then I've developed into something a little bit more of a beast of than what I expected it to do when I first formulated the process of opening the company in 2019. So Gentium, our bread and butter background, if you want to call it our bread and butter, and how we are badged up, is we appear to be a training company. So we are effectively badged as a national and international training company, providing training around anti-money laundering, financial investigations, cryptocurrency, fraud, cyber awareness, corruption, bribery, sort of that aspect of anything to do with the money laundering regulated sector. Mm-hmm. So it sort of developed and came about after really what is a background in law enforcement. So myself now and quite a number of the team who work alongside us are ex-law enforcement or previously served as customs officers or being part of the Crown Prosecution Service, dealing with the same sort of aspects. So, like for example, myself, I was a detective for a long period of time at West Yorkshire Police, where primarily my time was taken up with dealing with financial investigations and asset recovery.
Yeah.
So that certainly developed over time to develop me with a skill set in that aspect, and I became recognised as an international expert in money laundering. So the National Crime Agency at that point appointed me as one of their international experts in money laundering, and I began doing not only some work nationally with the different police services and government departments, but then working internationally to assist countries in understanding the legislation of money laundering and how organised crime groups worked and how they moved flows of illicit financial. So a little bit of a quick roller coaster ride, I suppose, from the world of law enforcement out into the international market. So I originally set sail for the Caribbean, where I spent some time managing 72 investigators in the Eastern Caribbean, based out of Barbados, and then moved from that location to Bermuda to undertake some work on a large politically linked fraud aspect. So I did some work in those sort of fields and over in the Caribbean region for a few years, and then came back into the UK, having partnered with a number of universities in the Miami region to develop training programs around financial investigation. So upon the move back into the United Kingdom, this is where Gentium developed from. So Gentium now sits as a trainer for law enforcement nationally, law enforcement globally. We work alongside government departments. We assist in the writing of regulations and legislation for countries around the world. We work hand in hand with law enforcement agents, customs agents, border force, etc. We work with the regulated sector, people like accountants and solicitors, to ensure that policies and procedures are understood and followed correctly to try and combat that aspect of organised criminal groups. and I retain my work as an expert. So I work for prosecution and defence teams, providing understanding to the court on aspects around money laundering, for example. That developed very quickly into the world of cryptocurrency. As Bitcoin develops from 2008 into where we are today, we undertake a lot of work in the fields of cryptocurrency. It's understanding how to track and trace, and so to recover not only for government departments and law enforcement, but also to recover for victims of crime. And a number of people have become victims of so-called crypto frauds, which are effectively a fraud just related to cryptocurrency. So we do a lot of track and trace work with the aim to recover and return assets to both victims of crime and to law enforcement. And that sort of spun into a larger contract whereby Gentium is the host for the storage of all recovered cryptocurrency for any law enforcement within the UK and a number of government departments. So as police forces are recovering cryptocurrency from criminality, we are responsible for the retention, maintenance and realization of that, along with a partner company that we work alongside who are based in Jersey. So that's kind of a quick spin in that training world. We have different little spin-offs in our company. So we have a cybercrime element. We have a corruption and bribery type aspect, interviewing. We also provide canine units. So we provide dog units around the world. So like detection dogs, cash, drugs, firearms, even a digital dog for Bitcoin. So we provide dogs around the world as well. So our sort of forte has been anything in that financial arena. We've developed very recently, we've moved into the aspect of gamified learning. Right. So we're now in the process of developing a lot of our learning tools are run on gamified processes. And just for 10 seconds, just to explain what I mean by that. For example, this morning, myself and a colleague have been with West Yorkshire Police, whereby we've actually developed and created our own cyber escape room. So we have an escape room, which would be a normal typology escape room, but instead it's very much organised crime group aspect. It's around criminality. And this morning we undertook work with West Yorkshire Police as financial investigators for them to undertake the cyber escape room. That's a bit of a series. We have other processes around open source intelligence and cryptocurrency, and that's a very quick run round.
Swift overview of life today. So, I know you said you work a lot with the law enforcement side of things, and then work alongside government departments and institutions, so financial. So, with things where it's quite clear cut, where it's working with law enforcement and you're providing training for them, I totally get that. In the other scenarios, who's instigating the engagement with yourself? Is it the banks looking for compliance or to chase money that has been fraudulently taken off their customers? Or is this literally at policy level where the governments and international governments and money laundering internationally getting together and going, this is how the rollout needs to be?
Both.
Okay.
So we provide guidance and support to governments around the world in writing, regulation and policy decisions. For example, this year we've been in 3 separate countries of the world creating them cryptocurrency task forces, writing legislation and regulation for them to then adopt. But on the basic of ground level, we also work alongside a victim of crime. If a victim of crime has been the subject of losing a lot of money through a cryptocurrency related scam, and unfortunately has been unsuccessful by trying to report that to police or action fraud, and it's not been undertaken, they may come direct to us, and we can do that similar work. It's a work that we teach law enforcement to do anyway, so we can do that on a civil basis rather than a criminal basis.
So this might sound a weird one. Where would people hear about you? I mean, is this as simple as you know, if it's an individual, they put in, you know, help to do with
No,
fraud, or
so
they would go through their bank first to then get introduced.
no, so people would hear about us actually through word of mouth.
Right.
So a lot of the direct customer ones that we get will be someone who knows what the Gentium team can do, what we are capable of. Maybe someone who's worked in the financial arena that we've trained, someone in a government department, maybe even law enforcement, who's then advised their client to pick up the phone to us and say, actually, these guys might be able to help you. We don't readily advertise. We don't go out on the radio or television to say, this is what we can and can't do. The reason for that is, unfortunately, as victims of crime come forward, a victim of crime is desperate to get their money back. Desperate. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of frauds that are occurring, there is little, if any, chance of recovery. Especially if it's not undertaken very, very quickly. And a lot of things are moved abroad very quickly. There are different steps that organised criminal groups undertake. And we chose the option of not advertising because, unfortunately, if you were to advertise on that process, you would have 10,000 people ringing up saying, I've been a victim of crime, please can you help? And you can't help everyone, unfortunately. The process just doesn't allow it. We haven't got the staff in place to be able to deal with all those people. So it's very much a word of mouth aspect where people come and assist on that process.
So you would almost recommend that, I guess, that you would hope that people would go through a watchdog or a consumer rights-based program or whatever, and then you would actually pick up if there are general themes, general trends at what's causing this, not what are the actual symptoms that people are having to deal with.
Yeah, we can sort of work alongside different government departments, different agencies, you know, those sort of people to guide and advise, not only around how you can track and trace and get money back, but also how you can protect yourself from becoming a further victim. We would always encourage people to report crime anyway. So if someone came direct to us, we would expect them to report that into action, something like action fraud, for example. So the cryptocurrency side of it, it's a difficult piece because there's a distinct lack of understanding nationally about it and what can and can't be done. And ultimately, some things are very quickly moved and become to a point where can't be instantly traced. So there has to be a little bit of work going into that and a lot of behind the scenes. And if you're inundated as a company with victims, you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, you can't.
And the other process that we've never wanted to be, we don't want to be one of those people who almost says to victims of crime, if you pay me X amount, we will do some work for you. And there are companies who charge £500, £1,000. So we will do some track and trace work for you. And very quickly we'll turn around to victims and say, sorry, we can't find it.
Yeah.
That's almost re-emphasizing on the fraud. So we don't like that aspect of, I don't want to charge someone instantly because it's a victim-led process. So you've got to be very careful not to over-advertise.
No, definitely. So in terms of the clients that you want to work with, as you mentioned, Bitcoin's been a rapid transition, I guess, in terms of where cybercrime and financial crimes are actually taking place. Where do you, as a business and still relatively early stage, where would you see this going? Where would you like your services to be engaged with the most, I guess? Which sectors?
Yeah, so our forefront on increased footprint, what we're trying to ascertain is in the regulated market. So the legal profession, accountants, letting agents, gambling, anybody who would be covered by the money laundering regulations, which when you look at that, is quite a lot of regulated entities, money service businesses, the post office. Anywhere where you think I've got to give customer due diligence in order to open an account.
Yeah.
most of those people fall under the money laundering regulations, and there's a lot that that regulated entity can do, which would firstly stop people becoming victims of crime. It would stop criminals using their services, and it would also stop them getting into trouble for being non-compliant with the regulations. It's good working alongside law enforcement. It's good working alongside governments, and having that push, but the footprint is not big enough within the regulated sector, and the regulated market takes up a vast proportion of people within the UK who are covered by an accountant, who are covered by a solicitor, a conveyancing solicitor, or a letting agent. And those are the places where a lot of criminality targets, that we can offer solutions and effective ways of not becoming a target and not becoming a victim.
It's interesting because there's somebody that I know that's come from the legal background and now actually has a risk-based business where they're helping organizations out there to become compliant so that they're not leaving themselves exposed to certain circumstances. There's also somebody that I work with who, when things don't quite work out that well, will act in terms of negligence claims against the professional service provider if they're non-compliant. So, you know, they need to do this, and it's a fundamental. Are you providing any other than advisory of how to avoid? Are you involved with any sort of countermeasures in terms of cyber security, or do you partner with IT cyber security experts?
We have our own cyber security team.
Right. Okay.
So effectively, we can drop into any business and do a review on any business to make sure that they are effectively safe, that their cyber prevention is correct. One of the big attacks that is happening sort of globally nowadays is in relation to ransomware attacks, or what we call date frauds, whereby effectively companies or individuals are being attacked and demands are made for them to make payment, or your computer will be locked out, or we've taken personal information from you and you have to pay X amount. We provide a premise whereby we can offer a solution, and we can provide cyber security. Part of the cyber escape room process that we ran this morning for West Yorkshire Police is about understanding that, and is about understanding that aspect of how cyber security works. One of the big pushes I have with friends and family, and it sort of increased through COVID, is the crazy messages that go on Facebook. And we all see them, where it will say, "Oh, it's a bad time of the year. COVID's worrying everybody, so let's have a little bit of fun. Answer these 10 questions. What was the name of your first dog? What was the first band that you went to see? What is your first high school? Who was your first teacher?" Etc., etc. These are all questions that effectively you would use to protect passwords on LinkedIn, on Facebook, at your bank, etc. And hackers are effectively stirring these into places like social media, and you don't realize you're becoming a victim by giving away intelligence. And we offer just some basic protection around those aspects, but also we review companies very much to say, this is what you need, this is how it can be undertaken.
So I suppose the understanding where you see it, because as you say, if you build the business around the victim support side, there's not enough of you to get around everyone. People are still going to get scammed. They're still going to experience fraud. So it's educating other people. Are you seeing sort of trends that things have moved more international now? I know you said that obviously it's UK and international, but is the general trend that things are systemic from a certain parts of the world which are very much linked to certain things like Bitcoin or whatever, rather than the more traditional fraud-based scams?
There are very much specific jurisdictions, locations, countries who are linked to certain types of criminality, and that does happen. But I'll just push it back on you, Ron, and just ask the question: if you were a criminal and you wanted to think like a criminal, if you're sat in the United Kingdom and as a criminal you are attacking other people in the United Kingdom, there's a good chance that you're going to get caught.
Mm.
There's a good chance that people are going to find out who you are, they're going to do the work, and they're going to be able to trace the evidence, retain it, and then look at a prosecution and recover assets from you, etc. So why would you attack people in your own country?
Mm.
I can sit in a country in Central Africa and send 1 million emails out to people in a scam, then what would be the chance of a law enforcement agency in the UK prosecuting those people?
Are you trying to tell me that I haven't won the Nigerian lottery?
I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to tell you that Nigerian probably does not exist.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That specific type of fraud is called a 419 fraud, and it happens all the time. But there are certain jurisdictions and certain people. Certainly, we are seeing evidence whereby criminality is moving online because there's less chance of it being investigated, of it being prosecuted, of the victim actually getting their money back. And we want to be able to protect not only the victim, but those people in between, the regulated sector, those people who are almost unknowingly assisted.
Okay. So I suppose in terms of the journey that you've been on so far, what's next for you? Because this is moving 1 million miles an hour. It's gone from using your founded knowledge of dealing with this from a law enforcement basis to educating now everyone from governments to institutions to individuals on this as a subject. So your sort of journey's changed a little bit from now, learning this for your own self gain and to do your job better, to now being a fundamental a keynote expert and an educator on a certain field. So what's next? Where do you see this going, and how far can it go?
Yeah, so we're obviously trying to grow the company in a controllable manner as best we can. We've partnered with a company called Greylist Trace, who are actually a Sheffield-based company, and partnered with a second company called Five Stones Intelligence, who are a Fort Lauderdale in America company. We see the partnerships with those companies as a real good stance around growth for not only reaching a wider market, but being able to provide a lot more. Certainly the aspect around what we can provide alongside Greylist Trace provides us the aspect of being able to work more along the lines of identifying where assets are, which country they are held in, how they are held, and ultimately getting them back, whether that be in a traditional banking environment or in the cryptocurrency field.
Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating journey and a fascinating topic, I guess. So how subscribed is the market that you operate in? Is it literally every country has people that are experts that collaborate? Or is there a whole raft of people doing what you do in the UK alone?
But there are a number of very, very, very good people in the field that I work in, without a doubt. I am linked into a number of them, and I've regular conversations with guys who potentially, if I'm going for a contract with the German government, one of my colleagues might win that instead of me, and good luck to them. There are some real good people out there who are trying the same as us to educate people, governments, law enforcement. Unfortunately, there are also a number of people who talk a good game. Is the sort of only way to say it. LinkedIn is full of people who are subject matter experts in everything.
Yeah, legends in their own lifetime.
Yeah, and it's almost the proof is in the pudding.
Mm.
I think it's been quite a journey for us, as what the people of Castleford are like, the people of Yorkshire are like. It's almost a truth-speaking nation. Trying to say it how it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes doesn't always go down well with everyone, but certainly our agreements with Greylist Trace, for example, another Yorkshire-based company. The first contract that we held with them was done on the handshake. It was a handshake contract because it's Yorkshire-based, it's Yorkshire bred, and it's right down the line. This is what we can do. I would never profess to be an expert in something or say I can do something when I couldn't. And that's what we try to do. We're trying to link in with the right people, and ultimately, the gain is to improve and look after victims, improve government's department. If that's not me, if it's a colleague, if it's someone, a distant connection who I know is a good person, I would help them out anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's an unfortunate thing to say, but the world of abundance clearly exists in your world. And in terms of your expertise being needed, there's enough need to go round, unfortunately, that there's plenty of people scamming, plenty of people creating frauds, that, as you say, whether you handle it or someone else does, it's being handled, and that's the main thing, that it's cutting off that avenue for whoever is actually doing it. One sort of final question, and then we're talking a lot about the sort of fraud side and things like that. When it's less exploitive kind of fraud, i.e. corporate fraud, where people are money laundering as opposed to a fraudulent activity and moving things from one area to another. Are you heavily involved with that side of things as well? I mean, when you mentioned the Caribbean, I've got images of the Cayman Islands and bank accounts and things like that, and tax-free havens and Bermuda and things like that. So is that still part of what you're doing, or less so these days?
No, that is ultimately, that's my main role.
Is it? Yeah.
Me personally, I sit as a money laundering expert, so
Yeah.
that's my aspect. The aspect of the Cayman Islands, as you mentioned, that offshore financial jurisdiction where you can sit drinking cocktails and spend your illicit gains, will always be an image of what people understand to be around money laundering. But if you talk about the aspect of money laundering, the City of London moves more money in one day than moves through Africa in a year.
Yeah.
So when you talk about who's actually moving money, we are moving vast sums, and a lot of that is illicit. So yes, we deal in that world, and certainly from my aspect, that is my role, as I'm the lead role on that within Gentium, anything around money laundering. We have leads on cryptocurrency, leads on cyber, leads on corruption. My trend would be money laundering, illicit flows. And unfortunately, while there is criminality, there is always going to be money laundering.
Well, I must admit, but more recently, and obviously well documented, but when there was the clampdown on various Russian assets and things like that, the amount of money that was shifting through London at the time is quite scary. You know, that it's moving from one place to the next. So
it is. We very much, that world of illicit flows and sanctions, what you're talking about people moving sums through sanctions. One of the Gentium team is actually based out in Panama, American national living in Panama, and very much the lead on sanctions for us. So we sit in that whole world because, unfortunately, whether you are money laundering from that single drug deal on the street, or whether you are money laundering for a corporate takeover of multi-millions, it's almost very similar flows that are undertaken. And understanding that, being able to try and trace it and get it back. But that's where we try to push the regulated sector a little bit to try and stop that flow, because if you can stem it at the start, you can make a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, it's a fascinating subject, and really interesting that we've the centre of the hub of tackling this is just around the corner in West Yorkshire, and fantastic. Even though that's not the hub of where all the money's actually kept, but fantastic to see what you're doing actually in the area, and how that sort of really scaling up onto a global basis, and it's only going to remain the same. It's going to get bigger before it gets smaller. So that's actually bringing us towards the end. So just really remains to be said. Big thank you to Andy for sharing. I mean, it really is a fascinating subject, and I'm pretty sure and hopeful that I never then cross over onto that other side, because it's actually good to know that there are people out there who are subject matter experts, like yourself. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or that we
No,
haven't
no,
really
thank you.
covered today? Or
No, it was nice to just have a chat over what we do and sort of work through those processes. It's difficult to squeeze in to a short period of time what we actually cover, because we're covering a lot, but we're trying to make the difference where we can, when we can. So
well, I think in true Yorkshire terms, you know, the rest is for having a chat over a beer or something like that, and we've got a little bit longer to actually
maybe
do
over the cocktail in between.
it. Excellent. Well, all that remains to be said, again, a big thank you to Andy. I really did find that fascinating, and great to hear his sort of story. If you're watching this and actually thinking it'd be great to share our story as well as a business, when we publish these, we always put instructions of how to get in touch, how to record your own. It is for your benefit. It's to make more and more people aware that you exist. So big thank you to Gentium, to Andy. Thank you to all of you for watching. It's been another of our Business Spotlight interviews, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
Cheers, and bye.